And I can never allow personal feelings or long-standing relationships to get in the way of doing my job the way it's appropriate to do it. But I don't want any of you to confuse what I'm saying this morning. Ultimately, I am responsible for what happens under my watch, the good and the bad. And when mistakes are made, then I have to own up to them and take the action that I believe is necessary in order to remediate them.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. And, of course, as we've been talking about all day, Governor Chris Christie accepting responsibility, though he said he knew nothing about this. He fired his Deputy Chief of Staff, Bridget Ann Kelly, and also confidant and campaign manager, Bill Stepien. He also had him withdraw his constituency, his consultancy, rather, for the Republican Governors Association and his bid for the state party chairmanship in the state of New Jersey. Now, I want to read you something before we go to our guest, the great Andy McCarthy, because earlier today, Andy McCarthy wrote, "Let's assume for argument's sake that Christie's top aides, the one he knows best and who know him best, could conceivably have acted without his knowledge. Let's also imagine that after years of working closely with him, they would conduct themselves in a manner inconsistent with the climate he has created in his office." And that, according to Christie's press conference today, is exactly what happened. Then Andy says the questions remain. What kind of briefing did Christie get before December 23rd? Who gave him the briefing? What questions did he ask? What was the evidence he was shown? And if his own appointees were claiming that the lane closures were over a traffic study, why was he simultaneously saying that the scandal, quote, makes no sense, but that he had no interest in seeing the purported traffic study that caused it? How could a former top investigator content himself with a quote-unquote full briefing that did not include the phantom traffic study? Andy McCarthy, welcome aboard. Always great to talk to you. You wrote that piece at National Review. Did he answer those questions to your satisfaction at all?
I don't know, Steve, that he even addressed those questions.
Right. I didn't hear them addressed.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize, which is why I thought it was newsworthy enough to post on it, is this actually has been bubbling in New Jersey for a while, and Christie was asked about it a couple of weeks ago. So when he came out yesterday and said, you know, this was shocking to me, and I learned all this information, which basically condemns my staff and, other people I've appointed for the first time, and I was shocked. I think that has to be measured against other things that he said up until this point. And over 2 weeks ago, on a New Jersey radio town hall style program, he was pointedly asked about this controversy, and he said that he had had his staff look into it, and he had gotten, these are his words, a full briefing on it from his staff. And I find that to be I want to say astounding, but I don't think we ought to get too hyperbolic here. But I find that very difficult to square with what he's saying now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, how do you get a full briefing? Let's just set the table for people who are unfamiliar with this sort of parochial New Jersey scandal. Although we are talking about the George Washington Bridge,
the most traveled bridge in the nation.
In the United States, right. So what happened here is that there were these lane closures that specifically pounded Fort Lee with traffic because of the way that it was orchestrated. And what they said at the time was that they were doing it for purposes of a traffic study, of developing a traffic study for traffic patterns and how they fit the toll booths at the crossings. So that was the stated reason for doing all of this. Christie was asked a month ago or 2 weeks ago at this town hall, well, have you seen the traffic report? Now, mind you, this is a traffic study that was purportedly done by his own appointees at the Port Authority, and he said, no, what would I worry about that for? Why would I want to see that? Which is kind of Christie's way of dealing with questions he doesn't want to answer. He very frequently, gives you the back of the hand and makes you feel like an idiot for asking,
right.
a basic question. And the radio host, I think to his credit, spelled out for Christie, well, look, we have this controversy here. You could dispel the whole thing if you just say, I've seen the traffic study, here it is, and here's why it was done. And Christie waved the guy off and basically said, look, if not this, they'll come up with something else, basically belittling this whole thing as Democratic politics that was, aimed at taking him off his game. Well, now we know that this whole thing was actually orchestrated by people in Christie's, not just in his office, on his staff, his top aides, with people at the Port Authority who he appointed. I think that's very difficult. If he comes out and says that 2 weeks ago he looked his staff in the eye, asked them what was going on, and took a full briefing. And let's remember that Christie's claim to fame when he was initially elected governor of New Jersey was that he was the hard-charging, tough investigating U.S. attorney from New Jersey,
right,
who knows how to get to the bottom of the tough cases, right? Well, this is the only thing in New Jersey he's actually directly responsible for, his own staff. So he had to basically investigate his own staff. He took a briefing from them. He had to ask the right questions. And I just wonder, how could he have been so shocked yesterday if he really did get a full briefing 2 weeks ago?
Blindsided, heartbroken, and stunned. Now, if we take him at his word, Andy, then I could almost see him saying, look, as he said today, I don't even know how to do a traffic study. I don't know anything about them. So why would I want to have looked at it? What difference would it have made? I talked to my staff. They looked me in the eye. They said they did the traffic study. There was nothing nefarious. There was no payback. They knew nothing about any of that. So if all that is true, I think from a political, let's talk political before legal. I think he comes out. I mean, if that proves to be the case, pretty stupid of him the way he went about it. But I got to tell you, he didn't say, like Hillary said when, we know that she got letters begging for more security and it killed 4 people because she wouldn't respond. What difference does it make? And there's no scandal and run away. She didn't do like Obama. I just found out about this in the media yesterday, and then fire nobody and nobody gets punished and nobody's held accountable for whatever scandal you want to mention. So I think he comes out looking really good for his presidential run if this holds.
Well, I think he comes out not as bruised as he would otherwise be. And let's, I want to be fair to Governor Christie.
I'm no fan of his, but that's
You are too, and we're both New Jersey residents.
By the way, congratulations. We have so much money in our state that we're now paying the tuition for discounted tuition for illegals. So our hearts are so big, you and I. It's amazing.
We're really flush. Yeah. And we have a governor who, like the president, kind of passes these things on his own. But I don't mean to keep taking shots at him. If you've lived in New Jersey for any length of time, he's done a very good job here. As he's about as good of a governor as you could get in a blue state. And the state is obviously in much better shape than it was under his predecessor. But at best, he comes out of this not great because, if he really didn't know anything, that means that the people who were closest to him, who he chose, pulled this off right under his nose.
Right.
And if he's telling the truth about that he got a full briefing from them and, presumably asked them all the right questions 2 weeks ago, and then, this hit him like a bolt from the blue today, then he didn't ask the right questions and he didn't conduct a competent investigation.
I agree, but in a debate against Hillary, it's like if she has the nerve to bring it up or whatever, it would be, Mrs. Clinton or whatever her title is, Madam Secretary, I don't know, Senator. I apologize. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong people. I admit it. I didn't say what difference does it make, and 4 people in our embassy died, and you still haven't answered questions, and we still don't have the answers, and you haven't been held accountable. You never accepted responsibility. So, I mean, I think it's a winning issue for him if he decides to attack her on it.
Except, Steve, this is where Candy Crowley calls timeout, and jumps in with a few Hillary zingers, I suppose.
Or the 911 call that might have resulted in the the woman dying in New Jersey, which is a tragedy because they were delayed in the closure. Andy, we're talking to the great Andy McCarthy here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Legally speaking, we have the hearing going on. First of all, the U.S. Attorney's Office is saying they're looking into this now. What does that mean? And we have the hearings in the New Jersey State Legislature today, where David Wildstein, the PA, the Port Authority appointee who quit, who apparently was involved right in the middle of this, he's taken the fifth to every single question asked today. So we got about 3 minutes left. Talk about the state investigation and talk about the state prosecutor, the U.S. Attorney. And Christie was asked, if you're subpoenaed by the legislature, would you appear? And he said, I can't speculate on that. So what did that tell you, if anything?
Well, first of all, I think Christie's wise to say that, he's not going to, he's already created enough trouble for himself. I think, judging it on favorably toward him, making statements before he had command of all the facts.
Right.
So I think on his part today, it was smart not to make any commitments. I would be more concerned about the federal criminal investigation, if there is one, than the state political investigation in the legislature, because the hovering of criminal charges always makes it easy for people to tell the legislature they can't testify. So the chance of them getting to the bottom of anything is remote. What I'd be concerned about is, this isn't just a New Jersey problem, Steve. It's a New York problem as well. There'd be jurisdiction for a couple of different U.S. attorneys to look into this, in addition to other authorities, because this affected both sides of the bridge. And what the feds are always looking for, of course, in these cases is an interstate nexus. And so obviously in the George Washington Bridge, they have one. Look, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to get a lot of information out there. There's a lot of blackouts in these emails that seem very peculiar. I don't know, this is not exactly a national security case. Why they need to be blocking stuff out of emails, I don't know. There seem to be a number of people who were copied on them or referred to in them from Christie's office. There's a lot of potential for putting people in the grand jury and asking for testimony. I think this could be uncomfortable for a while.
All right, and one more. Why do you believe that he did not speak to Bridget Ann Kelly? He knew about this 24 hours ago, and in the time between then and firing her, he has not spoken to her. He said it was because it could be viewed as witness tampering since she might be subpoenaed. You agree?
I don't know enough about it, Steve, and I don't want to cast aspersions on it. He may, he was a prosecutor after all, and he may be being over careful.
And one thing, keep this in mind. Maybe this will come back to bite him. I doubt it. Maybe he just made a slip of the tongue. He said he's had 2 sleepless nights on this. Now, I don't know why he had 2. If this came out yesterday morning, that would be 1, unless he had advance notice of it. But he said 2.
You know how this stuff works in the press. Sometimes the phone starts to ring before the stories hit. So.
Right. Andy, great, insightful as always. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Steve.
Andy McCarthy, ladies and gentlemen. Read him at National Review Online, best-selling author. The Illusion of Islamic Democracy, Spring Fever, Illusion of Islamic Democracy in paperback. I'm Steve Malzberg. We're coming back with much more. This is something that's going to be talked about for quite a while, I think, everywhere, including right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.